Cabinet has been meeting since 3 o'clock this afternoon. Let's cross now to our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch. Kia ora, Craig. What's going on there?
Kia ora. Yes, ministers have been in a cabinet meeting since 3 o'clock. All Wellington ministers here have been here in Wellington in the room. Other ministers around the country, particularly those, of course, in Auckland, beaming in via Zoom. It was a process that was set up during the first lockdown, rebooted now for the purposes of this one. Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, the Director General of Health, also in the room, briefing those ministers on the latest information and his advice about what to do with it. Now, it is the most up-to-date information, more up-to-date than what we heard at the 1 o'clock briefing. And that's important because there are still some unanswered questions. Out of that briefing, we did not know still about that one case which is in hospital. We did not know whether it was linked back to that cluster. They believed it was, but they hadn't managed to establish that link yet. So we're hoping that there might be some more information about that in the hours before the 5:30 announcement. Also still questions about the source of this outbreak. They have not managed to track down the origin, where it has originated from, so a big question mark there. And these are the things that the ministers will be considering, will be the factors that they'll be taking into account as they try to decide what step to take next. There are a few things, few options available, a few things that they could push ahead with. For example, they could ease restrictions, they could maintain restrictions, or they could escalate them. Easing restrictions at this point looking highly unlikely based on the latest information today. 13 new cases, 12 confirmed, 1 probable. It's looking more and more unlikely that they will ease restrictions. Maintaining them is another option. We could look at level 3 in Auckland for, say, a fortnight, level 2 around the rest of the country, or they could escalate, which is they could push level 3 out into other parts of the country, or the most nuclear option, I guess, which would be level 4. That, though highly unlikely. The Minister of Health this morning on Morning Report told us that the only reason why ministers would put the country into alert level 4 would be if there were multiple clusters, if there were multiple unconnected cases in multiple areas. Now, that is not the situation that it appears to be at this stage. However, as I say, ministers have the most up-to-date information and they will be considering all of that before they make their decision.
Any clues as to what Ashley Bloomfield is thinking?
Well, he would not give us any indication at that 1 o'clock briefing. However, the Prime Minister was very clear early on when she laid out the plan and the eventuality of this actually playing out like what we're seeing now, and that her preference was dealing with things on a regional basis. Now, we're already seeing that in action. We've seen Auckland in level 3, the rest of the country in level 2. They seem to be downplaying the prospect that we could see other areas brought into that situation at the moment. We know that there are other areas involved now. 2 more cases in Tokoroa, so we've got Auckland and Tokoroa. We also know of visits from people who are positive to Rotorua, Taupo and Morrinsville. So a lot of areas there that are connected, but they all link back at this stage to that Auckland cluster, and that seems to be giving the ministers and the Director General of Health some reassurance. Dr. Bloomfield told us that 95% of cases seem to originate in the workplace or in people's homes, not through casual contact. So he seems to be reassured by that fact. Also, we haven't seemed to see yet one of those super spreader events, like something like a wedding or a concert, which would be really concerning. We've seen overseas how outbreaks can really get out of hand at events like that. We are keeping officials are keeping a close eye on a few different places, the schools that are involved, the workplaces that are involved, and also a church service where a positive family attended over the weekend. So they'll be keeping a particular eye on those higher risk areas. But at this stage, like I said, no indication of exactly what the Ashley Bloomfield will be recommending. However, all these things taken into consideration.
Craig, are we expecting to get any update on the election date this afternoon?
It is an important decision and a quite time-critical one. It is hard to imagine or see a scenario where Auckland stays in lockdown for a long period of time, a fortnight or longer, and we could still go ahead with a September 19 election. We're looking at a situation where there would be no campaigning, no door-knocking, no campaign rallies in Auckland, our largest city, a third of the population, putting aside the fact that people's attention at the moment has very much been brought back to COVID-19, to the pandemic. pandemic, not much interest, I don't think, in looking at election policies and politicking and the like. So that is something that the Prime Minister will be considering. It is her prerogative. She gets to make the decision, and her alone does not need to be signed off by Cabinet as long as she doesn't push it out further than November 21st. So she can push it out to any date up to November 21st for whatever reason, and that is her decision. Now, she will be considering, like I said, all of those things. There is a lot of time pressure on her. Parliament, for example, is dissolving on Monday. It's already been delayed once, and then it was delayed, so it was delayed to Monday. If it goes past that date and Parliament is allowed to dissolve, then the power is removed from the Prime Minister soon after, and it goes to the Electoral Commission, the electoral officer, and they then may have to make a call as to whether the election can safely go ahead. Now, I understand that Cabinet is not on Cabinet's agenda today, and that the focus very much is on Auckland, what's going to happen to Auckland and what's going to happen to the rest of the country, not so much about what's going to happen for the election, although that decision will have to be made pretty promptly, more likely over the weekend than today.
Thanks, Craig. We will wait for that decision from Cabinet today on what happens in Auckland and beyond. Thanks for joining us. That is our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch, from our studio at Parliament.